Welcome to the Anklers Art and Crafts Podcast, presenting peer-moderated conversations about the careers and contributions of the talented artisans who work behind the scenes on the TV series and movies we love. I'm Christopher Rosen, the Anklers' deputy editor, and I'm so happy to bring you a series of conversations with some of this season's most celebrated Emmy nominees in cinematography, editing, production design, visual effects, and sound that we recorded at the American Society of Cinematographers Clubhouse on August 7th. Hosting today's episode, sponsored by Apple TV+, HBO Max, and Universal Television, is Claire Kaufman, SDSA. Claire is a two-time Emmy Award nominee, including this year for Apple TV Plus's The Studio, and she's an Oscar nominee for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. She sat down with two of this year's nominated production designers, Rob Tokars, a nominee for Outstanding Production Design for a narrative program, Half Hour, for HBO Max's Hacks, and Ruth Ammon, a nominee for Outstanding Production Design for a narrative, period, or fantasy program, 1 hour or more, for Apple TV Plus's Pachinko. Claire, the mic is yours.
Rob and Ruth, welcome. So great to see you guys. Huge congrats. Well-deserved Emmy nominations for you both. Great show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to delve right in. Rob, let's talk about your late-night talk show. What were some of the challenges you came across while designing Deborah Vance's late-night talk show? And what were some of the discussions about her being the first female late-night host?
Yeah, so when we did late night, we kind of knew we were heading there at the end of season 3. So I had a lot of time to think about it through the hiatus. We just didn't know where the space was going to be. And we took over stage 1 at Universal, which used to be Kelly Clarkson's stage and Conan O'Brien's stage. And we started with a black box. And when it came to her being the first female host, we very specifically didn't want to have a feminine set. That was a really big directive. But we also knew that we wanted to honor the institution of late night. So we have our basics, we have the band shell. You have where she comes in, and we have her behind the desk. And then we wanted to make it her. And she has such a distinct style, but also make it Los Angeles. So we started with the Art Deco. We used the Griffith Observatory for finishes. The band shell wanted to feel a little bit Eastern building downtown. But then we wanted to bring in a lot of her own history. And the star drop behind her is from the Palmetto season 1 when she was doing her residency. We did the Chevron floors came from the tour bus that we did in season 2. Behind her head, you have the journey from Vegas to Los Angeles and the silhouettes of the buildings. And then we did the headers we stole from Johnny Carson's 1972 Burbank set when he moved from New York. And then actually, Adam and I, our DP, had a conversation about adding in marquee bulbs underneath the header. And I figured those out when we were shooting on Fremont Street, sending sketches back to set designers and all that. But beyond the stage, we had to have this whole world because we needed to see every inch of the stage. So behind the stage, we wanted to show that this has been something that has existed for decades. So we turned the black box into a concrete floor, built gold rooms that were ancient. We had the crew sign one of the gold rooms as if they had passed through over the decades of late night. We had an old paint sink, and we built this old prop area, and we brought in all this old gack and lights and stacked them like things have been forgotten because we wanted to feel like she was just the next person there.
Amazing. I mean, yeah. It looks incredible.
Thank you.
Can we talk about the palanquin? Am I saying that correctly?
Palanquin.
Saying that correctly?
I learned that one last season. Yeah, again, it's the late night thing, right? They have a gag that they wanted to do. She becomes the queen of late night, and we needed to find something that would work. And of course, we tried to shop it. Doesn't exist. And so we decided to design it. And that was just, it's a matter of a combination of design and the technology or the engineering of making sure it was light enough for 4 stuntmen to carry it comfortably, and then sturdy enough that she feels safe being off the ground. So we stole finishes from the set. We wanted to feel integrated, and we wanted to have the look that we ended up with, the Roman kind of Greco-Roman styling. So it kind of, I guess we did draw, but it all started with a sketch and pulled everything together really pretty quickly.
Love it. Could you tell us a little bit about some of your other favorite spaces you created for the show?
So one of my this is like in the weeds stuff. One of my favorite challenges that we had was Jimmy's office. Last season we saw for the first time, we shot at the American Cement Building in MacArthur Park, which I feel like a lot of us have seen. It's got the big concrete X's outside the window, graphic loft space. We knew we were going to go back to that space, so I started designing the interior of it early on. It was really shortly after they were there last season, so we came up with a system of modular walls that we built to design the inside of the space and make it feel like they just moved in. So we peeled plastic off of glass on the first time we see the space. We have things, furniture in boxes, we have all this stuff stacked together. And then we were going to, over the course of the season, detail things out with furniture and smalls and really get into the nitty-gritty. And then 4 weeks out, the producer says, just kidding, we're going to build it all on stage. So we set a bunch of set designers, and everyone went to the actual location, and we measured everything. We measured the X's through the window. We 3D modeled them, had them 3D printed for our model, and then we had them modeled and carved out of foam. All the while hoping that we could get a backing printed in time, and luckily JC Backings had the image, had the slot in their schedule, and we were able to, nick of time. It was a really big team effort. My poor art director.
There's some other great swing sets. There's some restaurants and bits. You want to talk about any of those?
So the big thing with hacks is what I get from Jen, Paul, and Lucia is we want to be grounded in reality. And I feel this is a really good approach. I love half-hour comedy. I love designing for half-hour comedy. And there's the broad art direction side of it, but we stay real and let the actors and let the performances be funny. Then they are. So that's great. It's easy. But every so often we get to do that set that's really, you get to chew on. And we had a few of them. One was our boiling crab. We got to do a crab shack type of place. It was a 2-wall set, just kind of a corner of a building. We got to do the slippery oyster, which is, some of the other names were worse. I'd be bleeped. So what happened was we were going to shoot at Gladstone's by the beach, but then the fires happened. And so we had to move to a safe place because Gene was going to actually get into the water. And so we built it in San Pedro. We turned a food truck and we built a deck and we put all the stuff together ahead of time. Then we went to Singapore to shoot, came back, and then it was all loaded up in the trucks. We didn't have a stage at that point in time. There was no mill when we came back. It was really just the guys with their stuff. And they put it up on the beach. And then the last one was our attorney's office, which was the 5th iteration of a footprint that started with Ava's office, became Rob's office, became the writer's bullpen, became a conference room, and then we couldn't move. We couldn't leave the lot. There was nothing there, 2 weeks left of shooting, and we couldn't find anything on the lot that was good anyway. So we just ripped it apart, added a bunch of stuff from assets, and aged it down.
Amazing. Lastly, Deborah's house is incredible. But one scene that really stood out to me is the demolition of her kitchen. I'd love to hear about how you and your team addressed that and how you handled that.
So that was kind of the big thing as soon as we started. Aside from late night, that was kind of the big thing we needed to solve. And of course, in my head, first thing, I'm like, let's build it. Let's build a recreation. We do it all the time. We can do a lot more smashing. And then we couldn't build it. We didn't have the money. But we're going to do it on location. And the homeowners are really particular about their house because it is a beautiful, historic house. So it became us coming to the showrunners and saying, here's what we think we can pull off. Here are the actual smashing that we can do. And then we did a lot of R&D on how the plaster and lath would work and adding a shelf that was never there before so that it would break for effect. And then we figured we'd bisque fire some tile and paint it so that we can smash tile and put it on a surface that acted as a drum so it would crack a little bit better. And then covering the butcher block with another butcher block counter that was loaded with debris inside each of the slats. And scored to smash. We built full-size mock-ups. We ran through it with Jean. Jean had a rubber sledgehammer that she ran through it. We made some notes. And then we went to the homeowners and said, we promise we won't ruin anything. So we ended a lot of rubber padding and things that were hidden and wrapping things with it's just, we lucked out. Not really. My team really just kicked ass. Sorry.
Well, yes. You did, and again, big congratulations on a wonderfully designed show to you and your team.
I just want to say I am a huge fan of hacks, and between you and the set decoration, I just get so much joy out of that, and especially each season it gets better, and it's just such a relief from some of the work that I do that congratulations to you.
I was Ruth's art PA on my first union show on Heroes Season 4.
Well, this
I learned
is
so much.
the perfect segue to move on to Ruth. Ruth, where do I begin? I mean, the set, the show, everything about it, it's incredible. I was really blown away and amazed the other day when we spoke to learn that you had built basically the main town on a soundstage. And can you tell us about that and what some of the challenges were and how you went about doing that?
Like every show, especially big shows right now, there's always that first beginning of how are we going to do it? What are we going to build? What are we going to go to a location? And, we had plans. And as it happens, plans change. And we did not end up going to Japan. I scouted it for sure. And then we had to make we were in Toronto and had to make some very quick decisions about how to start filming in the middle of winter in Toronto. And Auntie Chang, our DP, who's become like a great collaborator of mine, or together us, and he was like, "Well, just build it on the stage." And and there were other DPs, one who didn't want, they were like, this is not going to work. And the thing that we all have to do, that I think everyone in this room, is that there's a certain point you just have to throw it all away and believe in somebody's vision. And you just have to believe it's going to work and keep working to that impossibility. And as we built the interior of the main house, the main kind of Akuno Ward house, we just started building bits of outside village, and with alleys and little roads, and we never had to have cars on them. We had bicycles and pedestrians, but it just kept growing and growing. And I think he had something like 200 sky panels up there. And for him, it was a dream come true because he could make any kind of day, night. And I just had to believe him in. And I think it also that kind of ties into a bit of Auntie's heritage and all the research I'd been doing about, Japanese and Asian filmmaking in the 1950s.
Well, that's amazing, and it leads me to my next question. What are some of the historical research you did, and how did you address colors and textures when most of the research, if not all, was in black and white?
I love color and texture. I think I started as a decorator. I started as an artist and then a decorator to get into the business. And so fabrics and textures and light, those are the things that are really, they kind of drive my kind of like passion for it. So I wanted to make sure in dreary wartime that they'd been in this house 8 years later from season 1, that we added those layers and textures. And the curtains are like some of my favorite set deck elements that because that's where light comes from. So I mean, everything, especially in those little dark houses, where light comes from is the little bit of information you're going to have to tell a story. So we patched, got some beautiful fabric from Japan and patchworked, ideas. We made lights. Lighting was so critical because when there's very little light, you want to make sure that shade is telling a story. So we covered it with fabric as well. So we got the fabric in there. The research is mind-blowing. I told you, if you ever need Japan, I have shelves of books that are all in Japanese, black and white photos, and then there's a small section of books on the Akuno Ward during the Korean, they're still there, it's still there, the Akuno Ward, which is the Korean immigrants that are living there. I have Korean books and I can't read any of them, and they're complex histories, and you did Oppenheimer, you don't want to mess it up because someone's going to know the math equation, or someone's going to know that that's a Japanese thing, not a Korean thing. And it was mind-blowing that having that pressure. And I tried we had historians, and they all had a different idea, a different story about what was right. And, it's still a very difficult history between Japanese and Korean. So the Korean historians would say one thing and the Japanese would say another. And so at a certain point, you kind of go with it. But it was terrifying.
Well, it worked. And it's exceptional. Lastly, the color palette for the show is beautiful. How did you work with the DP to achieve such distinctive looks for each place and time period?
Well, I'm only learning this now. Auntie had, Auntie was our kind of lead DP, but we also had Sophie and, last name I just forgot, who's an amazing DP. They had made an agreement on different lenses and special lenses, which a lot of people in this room will know, which I don't know. But we had 3 distinct time periods that we were kind of weaving in and out of through each episode. So we chose for wartime a very cool, and that was winter, so a very cool palette. And then I used some bright red fabrics, which I knew would be muted, and blue textures, because that is, to me, very Japanese color. Then, the beautiful thing was the 50s, when the palette really changed up to all those beautiful pastels. And for me at that point, I knew, because Japan was being rebuilt, and we were mostly in a black market, so it was just scraps of metal and glass and wood building homes. I would walk through the costume designer's room all the time and see what she was doing. She didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak enough Korean or any Korean. So the only thing we could do, she'd hold my hand and walk me through, and we could get it,
Amazing.
And it was our way of collaborating.
Incredible. And then it leads me to my last question. How did you source such authentic looking building materials? Where did those come from, being that you were in Canada?
Well, I guess you have to find it. I think the hardest thing was to find was the set deck. And that was, we had buyers and shoppers and research people in Japan that would send boxes. And it was like a Christmas when those boxes would come, because you'd be like, oh my God, did you see this lamp or this electric socket? It's just so different and so wonderful. And all those Pachinko machines from the 1980s, they're rare in Japan. And I think we shipped 100 of them. Wow. And then they all had to be rewired and built and framed, and they didn't come in those, in that housing. The building materials is part of research, though the Korean houses in the early part, the wartime, that's mud, and it's like Daub and Wattle of England. It's like mud and clay. So you just kind of do that in a way. And the scraps of lumber were all that the Koreans had living in the Okuna ward.
Right. And the farmhouse, was that a build or was that a location that you guys found?
The Minka was a build, and that was crazy. It's a 30-foot high Minka that we actually built in Korea. And you can't find much Japan left in Korea. Japan did occupy Korea, but when the Japanese left, I think the Koreans mostly removed all the Japan buildings they could. So we built that, and it was an extraordinary experience because the Korean, both the art directors, set deck, it's their story, it's part of their history, and they personally took themselves to Japan on their own dime to go to one of the historic villages where these Minkas still exist as sites, and they got every single note. It was adorable, and also I benefited from it very, very greatly. And it was a build. And
I imagine another really big part of the show was all the food.
I wish I were a foodie, and there's so many people that are foodies and love Korean food and know every detail about it. It was the hardest thing for me, and not to use a piece of a sieve or something as a decoration on a house, but as a tool like that. In retrospect, I think I would have taken both the set decorator, and myself to a Korean woman's home and had real lessons. But, Sue Hugh, our showrunner, like she, someone did the kimchi wrong. Like I was a certain, no, really. And the camera operator, she knew like everything about the food. So at a certain point, I was again terrified. The whole show, I was terrified, truly. And that I knew that those people were going to look out for me and look out for the show and look out for representing cultures.
Absolutely. Well, I can't say enough to both of you.
Thank you.
Incredible work.
Yeah, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This is amazing. I've never been here.